Welcome back everyone, it's Charlie. This will be my full House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 2 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs, references to the book, so we will break it all down. Grab your Valyrian weapons, everybody hop in, we're taking the Iron Throne back. The episode title is Queen's Landing, a reference to King's Landing because Rhaenyra is taking King's Landing with all of her dragons. They continued the trend of Season 2 with the tapestry just being added to for the Battle of the Gullet. This time, it added the Gullet with Corlys fighting Lohar and then Jason Vermax's death. R.I.P. to them. We also literally see their deaths in the opening scene of the episode. The whole opening part of the episode has no dialogue at all. Like, the first person to make a sound is the dragon growling, and then Laurent Marbrand is like the first human to actually utter words. The dragon we see here is Baela on Moondancer, and we see Jace's body float past the camera, R.I.P. There's a really quick time jump to after the end of the battle, like it's mostly ended, and we get the dragon seeds who have arrived back from the God's Eye to help finish off the last of the Triarchy fleet. But there's still a couple of groups of Triarchy that we see across the episode in different places that have escaped the battle, so like not the entire Triarchy fleet has been destroyed. Baela takes Jace's body back to Dragonstone on Moondancer, and then they take his body to Rhaenyra in the library of Dragonstone, where she's been spending most of her time. I also think that they film most of Rhaenyra's scenes in here for the most part, because it's just like an interesting place that we didn't see during the original Game of Thrones series. Like, it's just a very cool place. And this part of the episode is hard on her. She holds back the tears at first. I love the way that she played this too, like from an actor's perspective. Emma Darcy did a great job with this scene, where at first she tries to deny it, like she doesn't want to believe that he's dead, so she demands of him, like, what have you done, Jace? What have you done this time? Presumably her men had let her out of her room after the battle was over, so she's been out of her room for a little while when he shows up. They kind of speedrun the quickness with which all of this happens, but like the battle has probably been done for a little while when this is happening. And she eventually just completely loses it over his body, telling him, how could you have done this to me? This is the second son she's lost, second baby boy, second strong boy. She still has baby Joffrey though, so there is one strong boy and he is now her heir. She lashes out at Laurent Marbrand for locking her in her room. He apologizes and tries to give up his life to her. She is correct, though, that more deaths would not help. But she also tells her Black Council later in the episode, when they take off to take King's Landing, that he can do what he wants. Like, Laurent Marbrand can die however he wishes. So that means that she's basically giving him the opportunity to continue living as a member of the King's Guard or seek his own death. He worships the Faith of the Seven, and they do not like seppuku, so you can let me know what you think happens to Laurent Marbrand eventually. And because the grief is so strong, she lashes out at the entire room just because they're all like the closest people that she can see there. Up until the point Daemon gasses her up later in the episode, she is basically in deep mourning, just wrecked for the first part of the episode. We then travel to the coastline around Dragonstone in Driftmark. If you couldn't tell where this is meant to be, like this is meant to be around the Battle of the Gullet. The Black's forces continue to try and finish out the Triarchy troops who survive, while Alan of Hull searches for Corlys along with Adam of Hull, his brother, on his dragon Seasmoke. We quickly go back to the Eyrie and see that Rhaena has bailed and gone back with Sheepstealer, asking Lady Jane for help, bartering the use of her dragon, basically protection in exchange for allowing them to stay in the Vale. It also seemed like she learned of Jace's death from Lady Jane, like she didn't know that Jace was dead until she tells her. Jane is pissed over her abandoning her original mission to protect Rhaenyra's children with Daemon, Aegon III, and Viserys II, who are still very much alive, like still very much a subplot. They were supposed to be boarding a ship to go to Pentos for their safety with the dragon eggs that Rhaenyra gave them.
These eggs are even more fragile.
Ryan Condal did say they would address that storyline eventually. During the books, they were present in the Battle of the Gullet and wind up being captured. Aegon III winds up escaping on his tiny dragon Stormcloud, but on the show, they changed that plot dramatically because Stormcloud is much smaller, the children are also much smaller, and Ryan Condal said for practical reasons, they couldn't film the children in the middle of the big battle scene, so the show had to find some other way to pay off Aegon III and Viserys II's storyline. My assumption is that we'll just see that either like later this season or early in season 4, but it'll be relatively close to the way it plays out in the comics eventually, aside from the Battle of the Gullet stuff. So that would mean that somebody has to kidnap them at some point. Aegon III has to escape, but Viserys II has to be captured and taken to the east at some point. So if you wonder what happened with those two kids and their dragons, their dragon eggs, they will answer that sometime later this season maybe, or in season 4. We'll see where they push that to. Remember, there's still a lot of triarchy around Westeros that escaped the Battle of the Gullet that we see later in the episode, so that there's still people that can actually kidnap those two kids. Rhaena also kind of tries to play Rhaenyra like a villain to get Lady Jane to help her, and she allows her to roam free around the Vale, which is vast, she's true about that, as long as she stays clear of the Eyrie, because Lady Jane doesn't want to incur Rhaenyra's wrath because of what happens later, like Rhaenyra taking the Iron Throne and being the sitting queen now. So part of the idea is that Lady Jane is hedging her bets, like, I don't want to get on Rhaenyra's bad side if she finds out that I'm harboring you here in the Vale. All because later we do find out that Rhaenyra doesn't know about Rhaena, but does know about Sheepstealer and thinks that it's one of the Greens on Sheepstealer and is responsible for Jace's death. So Rhaenyra blames Sheepstealer for Jace's death, but they do eventually set up the idea that Daemon will learn who Sheepstealer's rider is and will find that it is his daughter, Rhaena. Speak of the devil, we then go to Daemon in the Winter Wolves camp at the Battle of Red Fork in the Fish Feed. They've finished off the Lannister forces and they're just singing and celebrating, and they're singing a song about the Fish Feed, which is the name of the battle that the Maesters recorded, but they also used the term Fish Feed because the Lannister forces were all killed and they are now feeding all the fish. If it wasn't clear, this battle is right next to Harrenhal and the lake is around the God's Eye. That's the water where the fish are being fed right now. There's a lot of lore that also gets dropped during these scenes here, particularly from Alice Rivers. Anytime Alice Rivers shows up, there's always a bunch of lore-splaining. We see Jason Lannister's head, his lion's head, both on spikes as they drink. Black Aly sings, Roderick Dustin sings, Oscar Tully even joins in, Daemon also sings. Everybody's having a great time here, until Simon Strong shows up from Harrenhal because they're near Harrenhal, bringing them more wine and the news from Rhaenyra, her letter telling about Jace's death and summoning Daemon back to Dragonstone so that they can take King's Landing. What a way to bring the vibe of a party down. I know a lot of people have always wondered about how Daemon feels about the Strong boys, and it does seem like he was affected, like he feels very badly for Rhaenyra about Jace's death, so it does seem like he did care about Jace in his own way. So even though Daemon is kind of like the demon on Rhaenyra's shoulder trying to gas her up through the rest of the episode in a number of different ways, both to kill Otto Hightower and to take the Iron Throne just in general, he isn't meant to be like a complete monster. But he is definitely a force of chaos. He then tells everybody the plan is now that he's going to take King's Landing with Rhaenyra, the Iron Throne, and for the Winter Wolves and the rest of the Rivermen to march there and meet them eventually, and also says he's going to leave a small garrison at Harrenhal that also gets wiped out by Aemond later in the episode too, so early RIP for all those people. Daemon says after Rhaenyra has taken the Iron Throne, then they'll take the Dragon Seeds and take care of the rest of the Green Army, the Hightower Army, which is still very much a thing. There's still a lot of Hightower troops. Really love this scene after this of Caraxes just having himself a little drink from the God's Eye Lake. This is the lake around the God's Eye. When he talks to Alice Rivers, she reminds him all about his Weirwood visions across all the episodes during Season 2, the portents, the omens of things to come, like the Long Night, the White Walkers, the Night King. When she says an omen of the end of many things, she's referring about both the Battle of the Fish Feed, like the end of his time at Harrenhal here, their time together, like, it's so bad to see you go, you were so much fun.
They will never satisfy my hunger.
I also think it's a reference longer term to the end of the Dance of the Dragons and the end of Daemon himself because of the battle over the God's Eye that Alice Rivers has also probably seen in her own visions and that Helena also told Aemond about last season. So like people are starting to learn about the battle over the God's Eye coming. That's going to be a Season 4 thing though. I laughed a little bit when she said it's the beginning of other things too. That's a bit of a sly reference to Aemond arriving at Harrenhal shortly after this in the way that she lords over him, like Aemond is now her prisoner, not the other way around. You can definitely tell who has the power based on the way that she looks at him when he's crawling towards her. She also jokes with Daemon that she's kind of not on anyone's side in the war of the Dance of the Dragons, the Greens or the Blacks. She's serving the will of the Three-Eyed Raven. Putting 40,000 men at Rhaenyra's beck and call is her confirming that she did poison Oscar Tully's grandfather, the previous Lord of Riverrun, so that Oscar Tully could then order all of them to help Rhaenyra. Thank you very much, Alice Rivers. She gets really funny after this too with her references. She asks him for Harrenhal and says she's lived there for her very long life, emphasis on the long life, and had seen it pass through many hands, nobody seemed to care about it, and it just feels like a reference to her being a very, very long-lived witch, like an ancient witch. There are a lot of people that wondered if she was secretly Melisandre or like there was something connecting her to Melisandre. I think it's just the idea that she's also extremely long-lived in the way that Melisandre was extremely long-lived, but they're two completely different characters. Daemon also completely whiffs on the reference, like it completely misses him, because she has no title or noble husband. In the phrase want Harrenhal, Daemon and Rhaenyra need the phrase, they have a stronger claim, so Daemon basically kind of tells her off, but says, I'll try to ask Rhaenyra to give you some sort of favor, some sort of boon. When he mentions no noble husband, that might be why she messes with Aemond this season and maybe becomes pregnant with his child, which is a book thing, because if the Greens won and she were hedging her bets, which she might be doing with Aemond here, she could compel Aemond to give her Harrenhal as his concubine and the mother of his child, as he would be king, and even if she didn't force Aemond to get married to her through some crazy weirwood trip, the king can still do anything he wants and could give her Harrenhal as his mistress. It wouldn't be a problem. So it just seems like what Alice Rivers is doing messing with Aemond later in the episode is setting that up, like she wants Harrenhal and this is part of the way she's going to get it. The only problem with that, and we'll talk about this later this season, is that we know what's going to happen later in the timeline from the Song of Ice and Fire books, so we'll see how that plays out on the actual show. There's a lot of history that they can play with that isn't recorded by the Maesters very well, like just very light touches, but there are like a couple things that they can't change. Like they can't change major events from the later Game of Thrones part of the timeline in the main series. When Alice Rivers tells Daemon, don't come back here again, remember what I told you, it's another reference to the battle over the God's Eye, because if he returns, he's gonna die. So she's trying to do him a solid here, not curse him or anything like that. Like, I'm trying to do you a favor, do not come back. I'm telling you, don't come back. This is also a reminder that during Season 2, Helaena told Aemond, you're supposed to die over the God's Eye, and he literally just flew past the God's Eye to Harrenhal in this episode. So you have a couple characters on the show that seem like they know the future, but nobody is listening to them. We go back to the gullet and see Alan searching for Corlys again. Baela joins in this time with Moondancer. I think they're mostly trying to set up a new relationship between the two of them because of the way the Dance of the Dragons eventually plays out, just to show that they have some chemistry together in this moment. Like they want to establish something between the two of them, just start a little seed here that can grow into Season 4.
And you're betrothed.
She talks to him about Jace's death, how they were betrothed, also to remind you that she is now single again, wink wink. Remember, single. Adam winds up being the one to find Corlys on Sea Smoke, none the worse for wear. We get a real quick detour to Aegon and Larys Strong continuing on the road to Duskendale. Aegon has started to become more clear-headed, and his detox has started to run its course, like he's slowly getting his mind back. He's less senseless now. Basically, the idea is like slowly building to a place where he can actually make clear-headed decisions, good decisions, not be a complete idiot all the time. And they are saved from Rhaenyra's men by Triarchy survivors who escaped the gullet, and Larys Strong suddenly thinks more highly of Tywin Lannister, referencing Tywin Lannister, making you think that maybe he's still alive out there even though he wound up in the drink. You remember the number one rule on shows like this, you don't see a body, it means that they're probably still alive. Larys Strong then tries to get Aegon to go to the east with him, which was their original plan, but Aegon demands that they go to Rook's Rest, where he expects to find one of Criston Cole's garrisons who will help him. Also remember, Sunfire was last seen alive at Rook's Rest. Important things happening at Rook's Rest later this season. Corlys then has a moment with his two sons and Baela when he says, if this be victory, I hope I never see another. It is a quote right out of the books, because the Battle of the Gullet was such a Pyrrhic victory, and Corlys basically lost all of his wealth, all of his treasures here, which he also tells Adam and Alan about, like, I don't have anything to my name now other than the name itself, which you can now have. So we get a really great moment of him legitimizing both of his bastards, and Baela's there to witness it, like, oh, I'm so happy for you guys, this is so great, and they start to make peace. Like, it seems like they're a happy family again now, whereas they kind of hated him before this. So this is also to set up the idea of why later in the timeline during the events of the main series, the Game of Thrones episodes, the Valerians aren't really big in that part of the story. They're still around. There's another Lord Valerion ruling over Driftmark. They do have a fleet, but the height of their power was during this Dance of the Dragons era, and they never ever get back to that level, which is why they're just not like a very big deal, a very big presence in that later Game of Thrones series. So part of the idea now is that Alan of Hull, the older brother, is now his heir, Corlys's heir, and he will inherit Driftmark someday. This is also why they're giving him a big hero arc this season, as well as Adam of Hull, like a big redemption arc. Like they're making them feel like much, much bigger parts of the actual story. We go back to King's Landing as Alicent watches Aemond fly away to Harrenhal on Vhagar, and she goes to the Gold Cloaks barracks to get them to help with her little treason plot in Rhaenyra's plan, and explain how Alicent is going to get Helaena to actually act as the sitting queen and order the City Watch to stand down. Daemon Caraxes then returned to Dragonstone, and he just completely dresses down the dragon seeds for abandoning their posts at the God's Eye. And notice how Ulf White tries to hug him. It's kind of a funny moment, but stops halfway because Daemon just looks like he's staring daggers at both of them and absolutely hates both of them, but really, really hates Ulf White, which is all to drive more of a wedge between Ulf White and Rhaenyra's side, because remember, he really wants the castle, now he found out that he's not going to get it, and Daemon starts physically smacking him around, so he really, really isn't going to like the Blacks. Just keep an eye on that subplot, just expect Ulf White to get more and more dissatisfied with Rhaenyra's side. Not a good idea to piss off people who ride on nuclear weapons. Daemon then meets Mysaria for the first time in a good long while, dresses her down again, and claims she didn't do what he asked. She reminds him that he reneged on his promise to let her go free, and they sort of have a moment between each other where they kind of let you know where each other stand in each other's eyes. So the idea is that Daemon isn't like super hot on Mysaria anymore, like, oh, you know, you're cool, like maybe we could get it on at some point, but he's not that interested in her right now, and she's not that interested in him, but they do kind of make peace. They have like this weird alliance going on. And there are a lot of references to like the weird love triangle, weird throuple energy between them, Rhaenyra, and Alicent as they both talk. Like Daemon even jokes with her about her being jealous of Alicent. Do you think there's still some sort of bond between the two of them? Basically a reference to like the weird throuple stuff going on.
Since transpired that there is some bond between them still?
If you are a big fan of all that stuff that's going online, there's like a lot of that online. This scene was basically for you. Daemon implies that Mysaria is also still a little hot on Rhaenyra. But the weird thing is that Daemon is totally cool with it all. Like everybody is like very secure in their own identity, in their own sexuality. It's just like super, super messed up and super weird. For the most part, I think they're trying to make Mysaria a much bigger character this season than she was in Season 2. Like, she didn't really have a lot to do in Season 2, but she basically becomes Rhaenyra's Mistress of Whispers, kind of like her version of Varys later. There are also a couple references that she makes to this later in the episode when Rhaenyra is leaving to take King's Landing, when she gives her her father's crown and says, "Remember, I was very loyal to you because I'm going to ask you for a job real soon." That job is basically Mistress of Whispers. They then find out that Aemond has taken Vhagar to Harrenhal, meaning that the time to strike King's Landing is right now, pronto. Alicent Hightower then continues to try and set things up for Rhaenyra without anyone in the Kingsguard being the wiser, and Daemon tries to gas Rhaenyra up again. "I need you to lock in. I know your son just died, but you need to lock in." I already explained how they're setting up the whole sheep stealer Rhaena subplot too, where Daemon's like, "The Greens couldn't have claimed another dragon. I'll learn about this later when I go fly to the Eyrie and find out that it's my daughter." She also makes it sound like she's in so much grief now that she's ready to call it all off and abandon her claim on the Iron Throne. Like, "I just want to be done with it. Too much, too much." She even refers to the Iron Throne as just a throne of swords, like it's this common thing that doesn't even matter anymore. And I love the way that Daemon gasses her up using the prophecy of the Prince Who Was Promised, telling her about Daenerys Targaryen. He literally references A Song of Ice and Fire, which is what was in Aegon's prophecy on the Valyrian dagger. So A Song of Ice and Fire term is now canon in Game of Thrones. And the whole idea is that Daemon is telling her that this silver-haired girl with the 3 dragons sitting in the desert mysteriously comes from their line, like the two of them's line. So Rhaenyra needs to sit on the Iron Throne because it is destiny, and this person that he saw in his vision, Daenerys, is going to stop the Long Night, the White Walkers, the Great Darkness in the north, which is what he calls it. You have to remember that Daemon literally saw the White Walkers in his vision, so like he's seen what they look like. So he's trying to make it seem like it was foretold by prophecy that it is Rhaenyra's destiny to sit on the Iron Throne and for her line to rule and then eventually stop these White Walkers. So Daemon is telling Rhaenyra that it was literally prophecy in her destiny to sit on the Iron Throne. Are you going to let your children die in vain for this? This is one of 2 times that he does something like this, the second time being when he gasses her up to kill Otto Hightower with Dark Sister. And I think what the show is doing is trying to make Daemon seem complicit or mostly responsible for what happens to Rhaenyra next in her slow downfall, like the bad things that are to come that she wouldn't have done any of had he not urged her on this way. Daemon also really lays it on thick with her, uses like everything in his bag of tricks, even references her father Viserys. "You remember your daddy? You remember all those crazy stories he told you? Those stories are real. I literally saw them." Rhaenyra has no defenses for this. She is like, "Boom, I am back on board, baby." There's a really creepy scene back at King's Landing of Jasper Wilde trying to assault Alicent. He gives her this very nihilistic speech in the same vein as something that Kristen Cole might say. Like he's totally in free-for-all mode, like, YOLO, what matters? We're all gonna die. Just everybody have fun. Do whatever you feel like doing. And apparently he feels like assaulting the Queen Dowager. He knows about her relationship with Kristen Cole, and he also learned about her treason plot from her Kingsguard, so he does suspect her, so he does need to die.
Move this man!
She's then saved by Orwyle, who's a friend of hers, like he's been a friend to her, and even though he doesn't know what's happening with Rhaenyra about the treason plot, he's still supportive of Alicent. My assumption is this will continue while Rhaenyra is sort of ruling over the Red Keep and trapping Alicent there, like he'll try to help Alicent as well. Rhaenyra and Daemon then inform her very, very unhelpful Black Council that they're taking King's Landing, even though they don't want to hear it. Mysaria gives her her father's crown, reminds her that she's going to need a job pretty soon. We get another moment of Daemon telling the Dragon Seeds off again. Not good, just remember that. But that the plan is that once they take King's Landing, they'll take all the Dragon Seeds, all the dragons, and go after Aemond in Vhagar. You also notice when they're flying to King's Landing, Rhaenyra flies point on Syrax because she is pissed. We get a real quick moment of Helaena inside the Godswood under the Heart Tree in the Red Keep. She notices that the trees are blooming again, these red flowers, I think meant to be a callback to Laird Strong talking to younger Alicent about the red flowers early in Season 1. Alicent takes her and prepares for them and Jaehaera to escape the chaos and set up for Rhaenyra's arrival, and tells her the truth about what happened with Aegon's prophecy and Viserys' death. She explains that the entire Dance of the Dragons war that they're having right now between the Blacks and the Greens is the result of her just mishearing Viserys' dying words about Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy, and Rhaenyra supposing to have been the rightful heir this whole time. But here's the thing about this, even if Alicent had not misheard him, and that wasn't a thing, like that wasn't part of the show, I think that Otto Hightower and the Greens always planned to usurp Rhaenyra no matter what. It was just a matter of when it was going to happen, and Alicent mishearing Viserys' dying words just accelerated the timeline a little bit. So yes, the Dance of the Dragons is a little bit of Alicent's fault, but it would have happened no matter what, is what they're trying to tell you. Like, there would have always been a war no matter what. We also find out that Helena's new ambition in life is to raise chickens. That's the thing she wants to do after they escape King's Landing, which she's really excited about. And Alicent also tells the City Watch the truth when she tries to get them to stand down to that the Greens have all abandoned the city. Aegon has abandoned his throne. Aemond has gone on Vhagar. Do you want to die in vain? Please just put down your swords. Let Rhaenyra in. And the funny thing here is that I think this is the first time that Helaena has ever acted as sitting queen in any official capacity. Like, she's always been just queen, but mostly just in name behind the scenes. This is the actual first time that she's ordered someone to do something as queen. She even seems like she gets really into it too, like Helaena is having fun here with this. Speaking of Aemond, Kristen Cole and his men see him flying overhead on Vhagar back to Harrenhal and take off after him. When he arrives at Harrenhal, he begins burning everyone and everything in sight. So this is meant to be a callback to Aegon the Conqueror burning Harrenhal during the conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. Vhagar also wrecks the castle even more than it already is, so like everybody that goes to Harrenhal winds up making it even worse off. This is all part of the curse of Harrenhal. Anybody that holds the castle befalls some very, very terrible fate at some point. RIP to all these troops here, but it's the garrison that Daemon left. Aemond then dual wields Blackfire, Aegon the Conqueror's Valyrian sword, and the Valyrian dagger, and this is the first time we've ever seen him actually wear armor on the show, because before this, he was never afraid and never felt like he needed armor, but he is afraid now, as Helaena said. When he runs into Simon Strong in the Central Hall, it's the exact same as Daemon meeting him for the first time during Season 2. Same exact vibe, it's kind of comedic, but this time Aemond forces him to fight, killing him with the Valyrian dagger, so RIP Simon Strong, but if you're gonna go out, you get killed by like one of the most famous weapons in Game of Thrones lore. He then kills Simon Strong's sons using the Blackfire sword, and I love this Alice River scene too when she just kind of shows up like Batman in the background, makes it seem like she also is the one who secretly stabbed him in the back with magic. And I love the way they play this scene with her kind of lording over him, like she doesn't even bat an eyelash, but looks at him like a dominatrix almost, like she is going to rule over him, keep him as her prisoner, her pet.
What do we have here?
We can talk about this in future videos, like future trailer videos, and when we get to those episodes, but there were a lot of scenes in the trailers previously of Alice Rivers and Aemond that seem kind of mysterious. I think this scene answers a lot of those questions about what's going on. Also the stuff with Daemon telling her that she didn't have a noble husband or an actual title or a claim on Harrenhal that she could assert. So you can post all your theories about Alice Rivers and her plans for Aemond this season and how you think that's going to play out. And we finally get that awesome shot of Rhaenyra and all her dragons approaching the Red Keep, so it's meant to be a parallel for her flying Cyrax around it when she was younger in Season 1, Episode 1. It was literally like one of the first scenes in Episode 1. But here's the thing, it's a very different vibe because at the sight of all the dragons, all the small folk just absolutely lose it, freaking out. It is total chaos, and the people are not happy. They are probably not going to be as receptive to Rhaenyra ruling them as she would have wanted. The music they use for this also sort of hail her as the conqueror, like this threat that's coming in to lord over the city, and it kind of felt like the vibe was more like Daenerys right before she was about to burn King's Landing to the ground. All the small folk, the retainers, and the City Watch lay down their swords outside, but they then basically have to fight their way through the Red Keep, raid redemption style, fighting their way to the Iron Throne. So I love the imagery and the way this part of the episode played out. All the people that Daemon winds up slicing his way through are mostly just regular castle guard. There's only one King's Guard that he winds up fighting, and they don't actually fight. Daemon seems like he's having the time of his life, and you notice a couple times Rhaenyra puts her hand on Jace's sword, that's Jace's sword that she's wearing on her hip, and almost draws it about ready to battle with him and kill people, but she doesn't until later to save that moment of her actually wielding the sword for it to be Dark Sister and when she beheads Otto Hightower. When Daemon yells, "Who else dares rise against us in our house?" it feels like the writers winking at the title of the show, House of the Dragon. Absolutely love the way that Daemon pushes the doors wide on the throne room and they make their way towards the Iron Throne with one last group of the King's Guard and the Castle Guard, but they are saved eventually by the Gold Cloaks, who have always been loyal to Daemon for these past 20 years. Thank you very much, Luther Largent, for helping save their lives here and helping Rhaenyra secure the Iron Throne. He's going to be named a lord because of this, like he'll get a title because of this. Rhaenyra then says the job is not done until they find Aegon because they don't know what's happened to him. They don't know that he's escaped with Larys Strong, who Orwyle basically tells them about, like, no, he took off a while ago. They're both gone. He then swears fealty to Rhaenyra because he was sympathetic to Rhaenyra. Like, he's a genuinely nice guy, but he's also sympathetic to Alicent. So I feel like they're going to use him to go backwards and forwards between Alicent and Rhaenyra this season. There's going to be a lot of scenes with the two of them. He then gives out Jasper Wilde, who's a total dirtbag, love to see him die in this episode, who was in the Black Cells, and we find Otto Hightower, so big mystery solved from Season 2. Otto Hightower had been in the Black Cells this whole time, since it sounds like Aegon fired him, and Larys Strong just threw him in the Black Cells, expecting that something like this might happen, so he's kind of a contingency plan to give Daemon a favor if he needed to, like if for some reason Larys Strong needed to barter for his life. That's probably why Otto Hightower was down there. So part of the idea here is that Larys Strong is trying to hedge his bets with Daemon, like, please don't kill me because I gave you that guy. We get a real quick scene of Rhaenyra greeting her supporters in the city, like the other lords and ladies who were still her supporters even under Aegon's rule. As she holds court, they begin to execute Otto Hightower and Jasper Wilde. And Otto also looks at Rhaenyra's supporters, saying that he expected them to turn on the Greens. Like, I expected as much, like he always knew that they would support Rhaenyra over Aegon. He also reveals that he doesn't know what's happened to the rest of the Greens since he was thrown in the Black Cells, because remember, he was in there for most of Season 2, so he doesn't know about Aegon escaping with Larys Strong, he doesn't know what happened to Alicent, what happened to Criston Cole, everyone else on their side, or even the Hightower army. He doesn't know anything about that. And we get that really, really twisted scene of Daemon gassing her up again to be the one to swing the sword. The one who passes the sentence should be the one to swing the sword. Ned Stark would be proud of Rhaenyra, even though she does this in a really hardcore kind of way, like it's a really, really twisted vibe. Otto Hightower also does not help his cause when he puts her down, claiming that she can't do it herself, sort of foreshadowing her having to swing a couple times. He also invokes Viserys' name, her father, which he really, really does not like. I think the reason why the writers have Rhaenyra use Daemon's Valyrian sword, Dark Sister, is because it used to be Visenya's Valyrian sword, Dark Sister, and if you remember in Season 2, Jace found her reading the old book about Aegon's conquest, reading the page about Visenya wielding Dark Sister like this warrior queen, and Rhaenyra was like, maybe I should be more like Visenya and use her as like a model for my behavior. Jace got very worried for her because Visenya was so hardcore, like, please mom, don't turn out like that. Like, no, don't be another Visenya. That's bad. Because Visenya was also the mother of Maegor the Cruel, and the small folk during the Dance of the Dragons eventually do start calling Rhaenyra Maegor with teats, which is a very, very bad thing, like the small folk turning on Rhaenyra. She then walks to the throne with Otto's blood on her feet. They're very, very obvious and heavy-handed with the metaphors here. And she finally sits on the Iron Throne clutching Jace's sword just as Alicent is hauled in with Helaena and Jaehaera and see her father's dead head, horrified at what Rhaenyra has done and what this means for the future. There's going to be a lot more to talk about in the trailer for episode 3, so that'll be like my next real big video to post.
All eyes look to me now.
One of the funny things about this episode is that a lot of the episode was originally going to be the Season 2 finale, Season 2, Episode 10, when we still had those extra 2 episodes during Season 2 before Warner Brothers made HBO cut them. The Battle of the Gullet was going to be Episode 9, and then Episode 10 was going to end with Rhaenyra taking King's Landing in the Iron Throne. Wouldn't that have felt like an amazing way to end a season pushing into Season 3? It would have turned a lot of people around on the way they felt about Season 2 just in general, just because so many people were down on that season. So this episode in general felt more tonally in line with Episode 1 and Season 2 in the stuff that it was building up to, rather than what you expect to see in Season 3. Season 3, Episode 3 will probably feel more like an actual Episode 1, because originally that's the way the writers intended for things to go, narratively, across the seasons. Everybody post all your reactions in the comments below, and if you spotted any Easter eggs or references to the books in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. My Episode 3 trailer video will post next. I'll try to get that video out as fast as possible, and my full Episode 3 video will post next week after they release it, so be sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss that episode. Everybody click here, I'll update the link as soon as I post those, and click here for all my other House of the Dragon episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.